Hollywood has always sold us illusions. The studios mastered the art of making us believe what we saw on screen was real. But the truth? These actors were often decades older than we imagined, playing roles that should have gone to much younger men and women. These are the 19 vintage actors who were significantly older than anyone expected during their most iconic roles. Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly splashing through that rain-soaked street in Singin' in the Rain is one of cinema's most joyful moments. The way he twirled around that lamppost, the athletic leaps, the pure, unbridled energy of a man who'd just fallen in love. It all screamed youth. You'd swear you were watching someone in their mid-20s, maybe early 30s at the absolute most. But Gene Kelly was 41 years old when he filmed that sequence in 1952. The man was middle-aged by any standard, yet he moved like someone half his age. This wasn't just movie magic or clever camera work. Kelly was genuinely that athletic, that energetic, that committed to his craft. He'd been training as a dancer since childhood, and by the time he reached Hollywood, his body was a precision instrument. Every muscle knew exactly what to do. Every movement was calculated, yet appeared spontaneous. But it wasn't just the physicality that sold the illusion. Kelly brought an emotional earnestness to his performances that felt youthful without being immature. When he sang about dancing in the rain, you believed he was experiencing that kind of pure, uncomplicated joy for the first time. He made middle age look like the best years of your life. What made Kelly's age in Singin' in the Rain even more remarkable was the context. This was post-war America, and 41-year-old men were expected to be settled, serious, focused on careers and family. They weren't supposed to be splashing through puddles like oversized children, but Kelly didn't care about expectations. He cared about the performance, about making audiences feel something, and in that, he succeeded beyond measure. Cary Grant. If there was ever a king of age-defying Hollywood romance, Cary Grant wore that crown without question. In 1963's Charade, Grant played opposite Audrey Hepburn in what should have been a standard romantic thriller, except for one small detail. Grant was 59 years old while Hepburn was 34. 25 years separated them, yet on screen, the chemistry was undeniable and the age gap barely registered. Grant himself was reportedly uncomfortable with the disparity. He was acutely aware of his age and felt self-conscious about playing the romantic lead opposite someone so much younger. The script was actually adjusted to acknowledge the age difference, with Hepburn's character pursuing Grant's rather than the other way around. It was a clever bit of screenwriting that addressed the elephant in the room while simultaneously making it irrelevant. Because here's the thing, when you watched Cary Grant on screen, age became meaningless. His secret was sophistication. Grant didn't try to play young. He never attempted to mimic the energy of a man in his 30s. Instead, he leaned into maturity, into experience, into the kind of worldly charm that only comes with decades of living. His characters were always self-assured, always in control, always one step ahead of everyone else. That's not something a young actor can fake, no matter how talented you have to have lived it. But Grant's age-defying appeal went deeper than just smart character choices. The man took immaculate care of himself. He watched his diet before it was fashionable, exercised regularly, and dressed with a precision that bordered on obsessiveness. Every suit was perfectly tailored, every hair in place, every detail considered. He understood that playing a romantic lead in your late 50s required looking the part, and he was willing to put in the work. William Shatner. William Shatner's case is unique on this list because it's less about surprising age during a specific role and more about defying age expectations across an impossibly long career. When Shatner first donned the gold command tunic as Captain James T. Kirk in 1966, he was 34 years old. Not particularly surprising for a leading man on television. But here's where it gets interesting. Shatner is still working today, still commanding attention, still playing significant roles in his 90s. Shatner began playing Kirk when Lyndon Johnson was president. He's still acting while we debate who the next president will be decades from now. That's not just longevity, it's almost superhuman. And throughout all those years, he's maintained a presence that makes his age feel almost irrelevant. Sure, he's older now, and he doesn't hide it, but he also doesn't let it define him or limit him. Part of his secret is pure stubbornness. Shatner has never accepted the idea that age should slow him down. At 77, he filmed a cameo in Fanboys, 2009, reprising his Kirk role with the same dramatic flair he'd brought to it decades earlier. He didn't phone it in or play it safe. He gave it everything, understanding that fans deserved his best, regardless of how old he was. That kind of commitment is rare, but there's also a willingness to evolve. Shatner didn't keep playing the same character over and over. After Star Trek, he reinvented himself multiple times. He came in as a television actor in T.J. Hooker, as a dramatic actor in Boston Legal, as a spokesperson, as a social media personality. Each phase of his career brought something new, proving that age didn't mean stagnation. If anything, the older he got, the more willing he was to take risks and try new things. The other factor is self-awareness. Shatner knew exactly who he was, knew how the public perceived him, and wasn't afraid to lean into it. He had made fun of himself countless times, appeared in parodies, and shown a sense of humor about his own legend. That kind of self-deprecation makes him more likable, more relatable, and ultimately more timeless. He's not trying to be something he's not. He's just being William Shatner, and somehow that's been enough for nearly 60 years. 93 years old now, Shatner still remains active, engaged, and surprisingly vital. Sean Connery. Sean Connery's career is a masterclass in aging gracefully while maintaining sex appeal. Most people remember him as the definitive James Bond, suave and dangerous in the 1960s. But Connery's most interesting work often came later, when he stopped trying to play the young action hero and embraced being the older, wiser figure who still carried an edge of danger. In Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 1989, Connery played Henry Jones Sr., the father of Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones. Connery was 59 years old, and the role could have been a simple supporting part, the aging academic who needs rescuing. Instead, Connery brought roguish charm, quick wit, and an undeniable chemistry with Ford that made the film work. He wasn't playing old. He was playing experienced, worldly, still capable of getting into trouble and getting out of it. What made Connery's late career renaissance so remarkable was how he chose his roles. He didn't try to recapture his Bond glory by playing similar characters. Instead, he went for variety. A tough Chicago cop in The Untouchables, a Soviet submarine captain in The Hunt for Red October, a monk in The Name of the Rose. Then there's The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, 2003. Connery was 72 years old, and this was meant to be a franchise starter, a big-budget action film that would launch a series, but it didn't work out that way. The film was a critical and commercial disappointment, but Connery's commitment to the role was notable. At 72, he was still doing action sequences, still carrying a film, still believing he could be a leading man. It's regrettable that this became his final role, as the experience reportedly soured him on Hollywood enough to retire, but the fact that he was even attempting it at that age spoke volumes. Connery died in 2020 at age 90, having lived a full life and left behind a remarkable body of work. His career proved that actors could remain vital, interesting, and bankable well into their later years. They just had to be willing to embrace those years rather than fight them. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth's age story is different from most on this list. She wasn't playing younger than her years in the traditional sense. At 28, she performed that legendary striptease in Gilda, 1946, and 28 is hardly old. But here's what made it remarkable. In 1946, 28 was considered mature for a sex symbol. Most actresses playing that kind of sultry, seductive role were in their early 20s. By Hollywood standards of the era, Hayworth should have been transitioning to more mature roles, wives, mothers, supporting characters. Instead, she was at the absolute peak of her powers as a sex symbol. That black satin gown, the gloves, the way she moved was pure confidence, pure control. And confidence like that doesn't come at 22. It comes from experience, from understanding your own power. From years of knowing how to command a room, Hayworth brought all of that to Gilda, and it's why the performance remains iconic nearly 80 years later. What's even more impressive is how Hayworth maintained her status as a leading lady well into her 30s and 40s. In an era when actresses were routinely discarded once they hit 30, Hayworth kept getting starring roles. She was still playing romantic leads, still being cast as the desirable woman, still carrying films. Part of this was her undeniable beauty. But beauty alone doesn't sustain a career. Hayworth had talent, professionalism, and an understanding of how to work within the studio system while also pushing against its limitations. The irony is that Hayworth herself was reportedly uncomfortable with her sex symbol status. She famously said, "Men go to bed with Gilda, but they wake up with me." She understood the difference between the image Hollywood created and the real person underneath. That awareness probably helped her maintain perspective as she aged, understanding that the roles she played weren't really her, and that her worth didn't depend on maintaining an impossible standard of youthful beauty forever. Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart, playing George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, is one of cinema's most enduring performances. When you watch him consider jumping off that bridge, when you see his youthful idealism slowly crushed by circumstance, when you witness his ultimate redemption, you're watching what appears to be a young man going through life's hardest lessons. Except Jimmy Stewart wasn't young. He was 41 years old when he made that film, the same age as Gene Kelly in Singin' in the Rain, interestingly enough. But where Kelly's age was hidden by athleticism, Stewart's was masked by earnestness. Stewart had a quality that made him seem perpetually boyish, no matter how old he got. That aw-shucks demeanor, the slight stammer, the wide-eyed enthusiasm, all read as youth, even when the face showing those qualities had lines and gray hair. What makes Stewart's age in It's a Wonderful Life particularly interesting is the film's timeline. We watch George Bailey grow from a young boy to middle age, and Stewart played most of that journey when he's supposed to be in his early 20s, fresh out of high school. Stewart was actually in his late 30s. Yet, somehow, it works. His performance never feels like an older actor playing young. It feels like we're watching someone discover life in real time. Part of Stewart's secret was his voice. That distinctive, slightly hesitant way of speaking never changed throughout his career. Whether he was 25 or 65, Stewart sounded the same. And because voice is such a strong age indicator, that consistency helped maintain the illusion of youth. You didn't hear an aging actor, you heard Jimmy Stewart, and Jimmy Stewart was somehow ageless. The other factor was his choice of roles. Stewart almost always played the everyman, the regular guy trying to do right in a complicated world. Those roles don't have a specific age attached to them. You can be the earnest idealist at 25 or 45. You can be the man fighting against corruption, standing up for what's right, believing in fundamental goodness at any point in your life. Stewart understood this instinctively and chose characters that let his natural qualities shine, regardless of his actual age. After It's a Wonderful Life, Stewart kept playing leading men well into his 50s. He starred in a series of westerns for director Anthony Mann that showed a harder, more weathered, but still fundamentally decent side. Then came his collaborations with Hitchcock in the late 50s. Rear Window, Vertigo, The Man Who Knew Too Much. Stewart was in his 50s for all of these, playing characters who were supposed to be roughly that age, but he brought the same qualities that had made him seem young in his 40s. The lesson of Jimmy Stewart is that age is partly about attitude. Stewart never stopped believing in the basic goodness of people, never lost his fundamental optimism, never became cynical or jaded despite a long career in Hollywood. That youthful outlook kept him young on screen, even as the calendar said otherwise. Lauren Bacall. Lauren Bacall's story flips the script entirely. While most actors on this list surprised people by being older than they looked, Bacall shocked audiences by being younger. When she made her film debut in To Have and Have Not, 1944, opposite Humphrey Bogart, she was just 19 years old and fresh out of her teens, barely an adult, yet playing a character with the world-weary sophistication of someone twice her age. That voice helped sell the illusion. Bacall's low, smoky voice became her signature, and low voices typically read as mature. When she delivered lines like, "You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow," audiences heard a grown woman. They heard experience, confidence, sexuality. They didn't hear a teenager, because that voice didn't sound like it could come from someone that young. But it wasn't just the voice. Bacall had studied her craft intensely before getting her break. She'd worked as a model, appeared in theater, and arrived in Hollywood with a clear understanding of how to carry herself. Her movements were deliberate, her gaze direct, her presence commanding. She'd learned how to project confidence even when she didn't necessarily feel it, and that projection made her seem far older than her years. The age gap between Bacall and Bogart was substantial. 25 years separated them. On paper, it should have been uncomfortable to watch a 44-year-old man with a 19-year-old woman was a significant disparity by any standard. But on screen, they appeared to be roughly the same age. two adults playing a game of wit and attraction that was entirely due to how Bacall constructed her persona. She didn't play young, she played equal to Bogart, matching him line for line, look for look, never allowing the age difference to become an issue. Interestingly, Bacall and Bogart fell in love during filming and eventually married, despite the age gap. Their real-life relationship lasted until his death in 1957, and by all accounts, they were genuinely happy together. The maturity Bacall projected on screen wasn't just acting. She had an old soul, as people used to say, someone who seemed older than their years in personality and outlook. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart's career was one of Hollywood's greatest late-blooming success stories. While most leading men achieved stardom in their 20s or early 30s, Bogart spent years playing gangsters and supporting roles before finally breaking through as a leading man at 42. The film that changed everything was The Maltese Falcon in 1941, where Bogart played Detective Sam Spade. At an age when many actors were transitioning to character roles, Bogart was just beginning his run as one of Hollywood's biggest stars. The timing was actually perfect. Bogart didn't have the pretty boy looks that Hollywood typically demanded of its leading men. His face was weathered, lined, suggesting a hard life lived. Those weren't the features of a romantic hero in the traditional sense, but at 42, those qualities became assets. He looked like a man who'd seen things, done things, survived things. When he played Sam Spade or Rick Blaine in Casablanca, you believed he had the history those characters required. Casablanca came just a year later in 1942, and Bogart was 44. One of the most romantic films ever made, one of cinema's great love stories, featured a 44-year-old man as its lead. Rick wasn't playing young. The character was supposed to be middle-aged, disillusioned, carrying the weight of past decisions. But he was also the romantic hero, the man Ingrid Bergman's character couldn't forget. Bogart proved you didn't need to be 30 to be devastatingly attractive on screen. Vivien Leigh. Vivien Leigh won her first Academy Award for Gone with the Wind, 1939, at just 26 years old. By Hollywood standards, 26 wasn't particularly old, but Leigh's case was interesting because of how she aged into roles that required emotional maturity far beyond her years. Her most remarkable age-defying performance came in 1951 with A Streetcar Named Desire, where she played Blanche DuBois. Leigh was 38 when she filmed Streetcar, playing a woman described in the script as a fading beauty clinging to the past. The role required someone who looked like they'd lived a hard life, someone whose beauty was cracking under the weight of experience and disappointment. Leigh embodied all of that while still being stunning herself. She found that precise balance point where beauty and decay coexisted, where you could see both what someone was and what they were becoming. What made Leigh's performance so remarkable was how she used her age without hiding behind it. Blanche was vain, yes, constantly worried about her appearance, staying out of harsh light, but Leigh didn't play that out of desperation. She played it as truth. This was a woman who understood that her youth was behind her, and who was terrified of what that meant, in a world that valued women primarily for their looks. At 38, Leigh was actually living some version of what Blanche feared. The tragic irony was that Leigh's later years were marked by increasing mental and physical health problems. She died in 1967 at just 53. Her body worn down by tuberculosis that had never fully healed. But her performances, particularly in Streetcar, remained powerful precisely because she brought her whole self to them. The beauty and the damage, the strength and the fragility, the youth and the aging. John Wayne. John Wayne was the epitome of American masculinity in cinema. He dominated westerns for decades, playing cowboys and soldiers and men of action. What was surprising was how long he maintained that image, continuing to play the rugged hero well into his 60s, when most actors would have retired or transitioned to elder statesman roles. Wayne won his only Academy Award for True Grit in 1969, playing Rooster Cogburn, a one-eyed U.S. Marshal. He was 62 years old, yet played a character who spent the film on horseback, getting into gunfights, charging into danger. The role could have gone to someone younger, someone more physically capable of handling the demands. But the studio wanted Wayne because, at 62, he still embodied that frontier toughness better than any younger actor could. Wayne continued making westerns until his death from cancer in 1979 at age 72. His final film, The Shootist, 1976, was released when he was 69. In it, he played an aging gunfighter dying of cancer. Even then, even dying, Wayne commanded the screen. He proved that screen presence wasn't about youth or beauty or physical ability. It was about the force of personality and making the audience believe in you, no matter what role you were playing or how old you were.
Barbara Stanwyck.
Barbara Stanwyck was one of Hollywood's most enduring actresses whose talent and screen presence made her seem ageless. When she played the seductive Phyllis Dietrichson in Double Indemnity, 1944, she was 36, though her sharp performance carried the confidence of someone far older and wiser. Her ability to shift from vulnerable to commanding made audiences forget her real age. As the years passed, she continued to dominate both film and television, aging gracefully into powerful roles. By her 70s, she was still captivating audiences, proving that age had nothing to do with how magnetic she was on screen.
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston built a career on playing larger-than-life figures whose strength often overshadowed his actual age. When he filmed Ben-Hur in 1959, he was already 43, yet his athleticism and intensity made him appear much younger. Years later, at 63, he starred in Planet of the Apes, 1968, continuing to embody rugged heroism with energy and conviction. Heston carried a timeless physical presence that made audiences believe in his youthful vigor. His commanding style and disciplined persona helped him bridge decades of Hollywood history while maintaining the same powerful image that made him seem forever in his prime. Fred Astaire. Fred Astaire's dancing was so effortless that few realized how old he truly was during some of his most famous performances. In Royal Wedding, 1951, where he danced on walls and ceilings, he was already 58, yet he moved with the grace and energy of someone decades younger. Astaire's charm and elegance gave him a perpetual youthfulness that never faded. Even in his 60s, he continued to perform complex routines that defied age. His style, posture, and refined presence kept him eternally youthful in the public eye, making it almost impossible to see him as an aging performer. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was known for her fearless approach to aging and character. In her early 30s, she took on roles that required her to play women much older or emotionally worn down, such as in The Old Maid, 1939, and All About Eve, 1950. Her maturity and commanding presence often made her seem beyond her years, and she used that perception to her advantage. Davis never relied on beauty alone. Instead, she brought intelligence, grit, and realism to her characters. Audiences often assumed she was older because of how deeply she embodied every role with emotional truth. Anthony Quinn. Anthony Quinn had an extraordinary gift for portraying older, rugged, and deeply human characters, even when he was still young. At 27, he played the seasoned revolutionary Eufemio Zapata in Viva Zapata, 1952. Alongside Marlon Brando, convincing viewers he was a man with decades of battle behind him. His weathered looks and commanding energy gave him a timeless appeal. Throughout his career, Quinn blurred the line between his real age and the weight of his character's experiences. He aged into roles with ease, but his early work already carried the soul and wisdom of someone far older. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney's long career began in childhood, and his youthful energy defined him for years. However, he continued playing teenage roles well into adulthood, often surprising audiences when they learned his real age. In his early 20s, he was still the high schooler, Andy Hardy, a role that showcased his boyish charm even as he matured. Later, he transitioned into more eccentric parts, like in Breakfast at Tiffany's, 1961, at 41. Rooney's childlike expressions and restless enthusiasm gave him an ageless quality that blurred the line between the teenager he once was and the seasoned actor he became. Rex Harrison. Rex Harrison was 56 when he portrayed Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady, 1964, yet his charisma and energy made him appear far younger. He carried himself with wit, sophistication, and liveliness that gave his performance a timeless quality. Harrison's elegant demeanor and sharp intelligence masked his years, making him seem eternally in his prime. His ability to balance authority with charm made audiences overlook his age completely. Even later in life, he maintained the same poise and flair, continuing to play complex, confident characters who embodied both maturity and youthful spirit at once. Maureen O'Hara. Maureen O'Hara was celebrated for her fiery beauty and strength, which seemed untouched by time. At 41, she played romantic leads with the same vitality she had in her 20 years in The Battle of the Villa Fiorita, 1965. She starred opposite a younger Yves Montand, but carried the role with elegance and conviction. O'Hara's grace, wit, and strong presence gave her an ageless screen appeal. Audiences rarely thought about her age because her characters radiated passion and confidence. Her timelessness came not from pretending to be young, but from owning every stage of her womanhood on screen. James Cagney. James Cagney brought explosive energy to every performance, which often made him seem younger than he was. When he played the ruthless criminal in White Heat, 1949, he was already 42, but his sharp movements and fiery delivery gave him the edge of a much younger man. Cagney's expressive face and fierce intensity made him stand out in every scene. His physicality and commitment to his characters created an illusion of youth. Even as he aged, audiences saw his vitality before his years, and that made him one of Hollywood's most timeless tough guys. The golden age of Hollywood wasn't just about fame and scandal. It was also a time when talent and charisma could defy age itself. These actors didn't just perform their roles, but reinvented what it meant to stay timeless on screen. They all prove that true artistry doesn't fade with time. So, which of these actors surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy discovering hidden sides of Hollywood, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from film history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.